Namaste, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to be here to talk to you about Hinduism, just giving an overview. And bear with us. This is a complex topic because Hinduism is the oldest faith on earth today with a recorded history of 5,000 years, but we believe it's a lot older than that. So it's a stretch goal to get through everything today, but I have full confidence that we will get through at least an overview. So let's get going. Before we get going, let's get some context. Hinduism, as I said, is the oldest faith. It has no known founder. It has no single source of truth. It's the best way to think about is it's an experiential, holistic faith and the experience of every Hindu varies drastically. So my experience as a Hindu is very different from that of even my sisters or my parents, certainly my neighbors or Hindus from different parts of the world. And a lot of that is because we have hundreds of sacred texts, but no one book or one set of laws that is our end all and clear be all. And I think there's a joke, but I think it reflects reality that if you have 5 Hindus in the room, you probably have 7 viewpoints. So maybe the only thing we can agree on that there is massive diversity in the faith. Hinduism, we can go into the history of the word later, but it is also known as Sanatan Dharma. And so many times you'll hear terms like Sanatani or from Dharma. You'll end up hearing these words a lot, and they all refer to the Hindu faith. So let's just start with some quick demographics. In numbers today, it is the 3rd largest faith in the world. And there are more than 3 million Hindus right here in the United States and more than 1 billion worldwide. And as we talked about, it's a very diverse group that you can find in many different countries in all continents of the world. I think one of the largest concentrations of Hindus outside the Indian subcontinent might be in South Africa, but you will find them in Mauritius, Southeast Asia, Europe, of course, in the US, Canada, and all other places. So let's get into what Hindus believe in. I think even though I said it's a very diverse faith and we all think very differently, therefore, one thing that does define the faith is a belief in pluralism and religious freedom, because Hindus fundamentally believe that every being connects with another, the divine, in their own unique ways. That is also behind the concept of the Namaste symbol that I started the program with, because it says that, I bow to the divine in you, and each of us has a spark of divinity. So how do we understand the divine? That actually varies from individual to individual, and it manifests itself in many different forms. And we also believe that the divine can be worshipped by many, many different means. So I think before we move on, I'll just say a quick sentence or a quick shloka that sort of encompasses the sum of these beliefs. And it basically means Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti, which basically means that the Hindu world believes that there's many viewpoints, but just many ways to get to the divine and secure a better future. So Hinduism promotes a lot of respect for other religions, and I think it's unique in acknowledging that all religions have the potential to show the truth to those who follow them. And this is exactly why we say pluralism is very, very central to Hinduism. Diversity is sort of another facet of Hinduism. And we see a variety of religions and philosophies as different paths to God. So let's take a pause and answer a quick question, just to make sure that everyone's been following along and engaged. What is another name for the Hindu faith? You can type in your answers, Sadhu, Om, Sanatan Dharma, or Yog. Moving on, I want to really talk about this slide, because one of the things that is really unique to the Hindu faith is that it is the only mainstream faith today that worships the divinity in the female form. And if we look at the word Shakti, it's a Sanskrit word, and the very word itself means power or strength. And I, as a Hindu woman, it makes me very proud that the very word for strength, femininity, power, are seen as feminine. These are normally seen as masculine attributes in the West, but in the Hindu context, these are seen as feminine attributes, and they are used interchangeably for the concept of the female divinity. And the female divinity is a very, very powerful tradition within the Hindu context, and there are many, many different types of devis. And they are the worshippers of Shakti are called Shakta. And the Shakta tradition is one of the three main traditions of Hinduism, the other two being the Vishnu, the worship of Vishnu and the worship of Shiva. Evidence of Devi worship has been found since prehistoric times. On the Indian subcontinent, even today, is dotted with millions of shrines to her, big and small, everything from a small alcove altar in somebody's room to massive multi-storied shrines. So this is one thing that I think really is unique to Hinduism. But Hindus are overall said to be striving to have 4 goals in life. And let's take a look to see what those goals might be. We have dharma, which is a term you might have heard. But dharma is the foundation of Hinduism, and dharmic qualities are extensively described in our scriptures. It is basically the righteous action that an individual should pursue in any given situation. And I think that's why I refer back to what I said at the opening, that Hinduism is a very experiential, contextual faith, because the right action that you have to take really depends on the situation you are in and the kind of person you are and your own circumstances. The other goal in life is arth, the pursuit of prosperity. And and then we come to kam, which is enjoyment of the material world. And in that forms everything like friendship, romantic relationships, a good house, good comforts, all of that comes between arth and kam. And these are considered valid goals for the Hindu as he or she goes through the life cycle. Then there is moksha. Moksha is a slightly difficult to understand concept, but it's not salvation as is known in the Abrahamic faiths. It's basically a belief that the end goal, the successful goal of a soul is to be liberated from the cycle of rebirths that Hindus believe we are all part of. And so moksha means that you have done enough good deeds that your soul is now liberated from the cycle of rebirth and goes and becomes one with the divinity, the energy, the cosmos, based on what you believe in. And then fundamental to the practice of Hinduism are some words that you may or may not have heard, but I think this is one of the popular ones, karma. And karma is another term that is very popular in the West, but unfortunately quite misunderstood. And an easy way to understand karma is somewhat like the cause and effect, but not exactly in a way that something happens and you're helpless. No, it's you own your destiny. And what you do today will shape what you are tomorrow. And what you are facing today is the result of what you have done in the past. So it's a very holistic and macro way of looking at both yourself and your life and your actions. Moksha is, as I talked about, the ultimate goal that most Hindus strive for, because it really gives us liberation from the cycle of rebirth. We believe that at the end of the day, anytime you're born on earth as a human being or as any other being, you're going to go through a cycle of pain and joy, highs and lows. And moksha actually frees you from this whole sort of cycle, which is obviously going to be painful as part of the different life cycles that one cycles through. Hinduism does recognize that moksha is not an easy process, and it could take a long time, multiple births, to get to this goal. But that is no reason not to pursue it. So the other concept that Hinduism has made really popular throughout the world is the concept of yoga. Yoga is a multi-billion-dollar industry in the US today. About 36 million Americans are estimated to practice yoga. That's a 50% increase in just recent years. So yoga quite truly may be the most popular gift Hinduism has given to the modern world. And but I think it's also important to remember that what we think of as yoga in the Western world is really just a very small aspect of the discipline of yoga. Yoga is so much more than physical stretching or the asanas that are popular in the West. So I think what passes for yoga in the West is basically asanas. Now we have a quick quiz, and that's basically how many goals of, what are the goals of, how many goals does Hinduism have? 1, 3, 4, or 10? So let's take a pause and now think, coming back to the world that we live in. How do Hindus worship? What are our rituals like? What are our practices and beliefs like? So Hinduism is again hard to define because it's a very diverse way of worshiping, but you can have a collective or an individual approach. And there's many different ways to get closer to the divinity. A few of them I've listed here. So there's some rituals that people engage in on a regular basis. Puja, that's a very popular ritual. You can do it in your home. You can do it while sitting in your office. You can do it you can do a mental puja in your mind. You can do a Havan, and that is where we will actually have a little fire going and be chanting some mantras in a very specific and coordinated and ritualistic way. Or you can meditate. You could be doing all of these types of practices at a home altar, which would be called a puja ghar, or big community places like temples or parks or other places that work depending on the context. And each of these can be part of a festival and sacred rites, or it could be a small individual ceremony you do on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis based on your beliefs and preferences. Hindus also, of course, love to study and discuss their sacred texts. And I will talk about our sacred texts in a separate section a little later. So stay tuned on that one. But if you look at the images here, we've tried to give you a sprinkling of the many aspects and many visuals that go into what you might see happening around you when a puja or a havan is being conducted. One of the most visible aspects of Hinduism are the murtis or the vigrahas that we worship. While these are often translated as idol, a more accurate translation would be the embodiment. Because we truly believe that the image or the object that we are worshiping is at that point embodied with the qualities of the divine deity that we are trying to pray to. And so Hindus, can be, again, you can find these murtis or vigrahas. They can come in all shapes and sizes, all levels of grandeur, and they can be made of any type of material, a vast variety of materials. But they are very important to our way of worship because they help give us a way to visualize and meditate upon the Brahman, which is, or the formless divinity, which is supposed to be beyond the grasp of most normal human minds. Of course, if you're if you're very evolved in your religious or spiritual practice, you may be beyond the need for rituals, murtis, vigrahas, etc. But this will be a very common way that you will find in most mainstream and average Hindus. Now, because of Hinduism's fundamental reverence for the divine, you will find that we find divinity in everything. And that is why you will often find images of animals commonly becoming represented in popular deities. So we have Ganesha, who is popularly known as the remover of obstacles, and almost every puja or Hindu ceremony will begin with an invocation to Ganesha. You also have Hanuman, who is a very popular deity from the epic Ramayana. And Hanuman has a very wide-ranging character, but he is most often worshipped as the embodiment of perfect devotion, loyalty, but also strength. And Hanuman plays a very critical role in Ramayana, which is a very central epic to Hindus. Now, some of the popular questions that come: do Hindus worship cows? No, not really, but we do believe they're sacred and we do think they are very important. So the reverence for cows need to be understood as part of our broader reverence for nature. And Hindus regard all living creatures, not just cows, as sacred, and that includes mammals, fishes, birds, and more. And the cow has a special place in this pantheon of life. I think there's many reasons for that, but they're seen as gentle, fun creatures that are very much part of the family. They're seen as almost a mother figure in traditional agrarian households, where the cow was a very central part to the economy, to the life and a life of a lot of the village activities, and a lot of the food and farming practices in the villages revolve around the cows and the bulls. So the veneration of the cow instills in Hindus the virtues of gentleness, receptivity, and connectedness with nature, all of which we feel the cow embodies very well. You'll see the same deep respect for nature come out in our respect for the environment. Hindus find sacredness in trees, in plants, and in rivers. And if you look at the Indian subcontinent, almost every river or every major river is considered to be a sacred. And most of them are actually seem to be feminine devis. There is one river which has a masculine entity. But most of the rivers are feminine and are worshipped as goddesses. We also have a plant called the holy basil. You may have seen it here being sold in stores. And the whole practice of Ayurveda is actually firmly grounded in this sort of holistic approach to the environment and the elements of nature that we live immersed in. So let's talk about the practices and symbols of Hinduism. How would you recognize something as Hindu, especially here in the US, where it's not part of the majority faith? One of the things I do want to talk about is the gender embracing nature of Hinduism. We already talked about the emphasis on the female divinity, but now let's look at what Hinduism says about women, real living women. So again, the term embodiment, it's a very important way of looking at things when you are a Hindu. But women are celebrated as an embodiment of the divine feminine, and therefore they are seen as both powerful and loving, and able to span a vast variety of consciousness and facets, just based on where they are in their life and what they're dealing with. I'm very proud to come from a faith which has a vast body of literature that specifically deals with female divinities, the role of women, the rights of women, the lives of women. And some of these literary texts is what I have mentioned here as the Devi Upanishad, Devi Mahatmya, Devi Bhagavad Purana, and the Devi Sukta. And I think it's very important to remember that throughout its ancient history, its vast and varied history, Hindu women have consistently led their society, be it a philosopher, be it a saint, a warrior, poets, dancers, singers, rulers, whatever professions we've had, women have been part of it. And you see that even today, where Hindu women are big in STEM fields, they're architects, they're pilots, they're part of the army, they're everywhere. One thing to remember is that if you look at the world's oldest text today, it's a Hindu text called the Rig Veda. And very proud to say that some of the oldest recorded female authors called Rishikas can be found in this Rig Veda. And then we have ancient scholars, Gargi, Sulabha, Vaidavi, Maitreyi. These are household names even today. I come from Delhi, and you can actually find colleges named after Gargi, named after Maitreyi. And the work of medieval poetesses like Mirabai have continued to resonate even today in millions of Hindu households, in pop culture, in contemporary music, etc. I think the other aspect to remember about Hinduism is it is extremely accepting of gender fluidity, and its stories and its epics are replete with deities and characters that are transgender, and that change genders over the course of their stories. And I think it's grounded in the worldview that everything is about the Atma, which I think is loosely translated as the soul, but is not really a great translation. And the Atma has no gender. And so a lot of things in Hinduism you will see just transcend some of the boundaries of gender and time as we think about them today. The Om is one of the most sacred Hindu symbols, and it has many, many meanings. It's supposed to encapsulate the entire sound of the entire universe in it, because it's Om. And Hindus believe that chanting Om can help you really align and become holistically one, mind, body, and soul with the universe. You'll typically hear Om chanted at the beginning and end of all prayers. It's also a popular way to, wear a pendant, or you'll see Om symbols on cars, on the shop fronts, at homes, etc. Now we're going to come, so another quick quiz. So why do Hindus revere cows? Take a shot. What do you think is it? Is it because they're a family member? Are they gentle and giving beams? Are they exemplifying a broader reverence for the environment and living things, or all of the above? So let's come to another symbol equally beloved of Hindus, but a little more controversial in the Western world, the swastika. Now, before everybody reacts all horrified, I would like to remind everybody that the ancient swastika has been around and is found in human history and archaeological digs from thousands and thousands of years ago. Even today, it's a beloved symbol of both good fortune and auspiciousness by a vast number of world faiths, not just Hindus. So the swastika is actually equally sacred to Buddhists and to Jains. And if you go to the Indian subcontinent, or if you go to Southeast Asia and you visit Buddhist temples, Jain temples, Hindu temples, you will find the swastika everywhere. And although this symbol has unfortunately become associated with Hitler, it's very important to remember that he actually called it the Hakenkreuz, not the swastika. His biography, the Mein Kampf, actually has no reference to the word swastika, but multiple references to Hakenkreuz. Unfortunately, this hateful Nazi symbol has nothing to do with the numerous groups that still today use and honor the ancient and sacred symbol of swastika. And I'm going to show you some pictures, but swastika is really widely, and it's like you'll find it everywhere where Hindus, Jains, Buddhists live. So let's take a look at the next slide, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. Here's a smattering of just images. If you were to Google swastika in India or Japan, you'll find all of these. And you can start to see the omnipresence of how the swastika gets used everywhere. You see it daubed on the side of a three-wheeler, or tuk-tuk as it is known in Southeast Asia. Here, a fisherman has daubed it on his boat along with the Om for good luck as he or she goes out on the perilous seas. You'll find it on a temple. You're finding it on Diwali. People have made a swastika rangoli made out of lit diyas. Very common when Hindus start a new venture, where they buy a new car, they're buying a new house, they've opened a new shop. You'll see them daub a little swastika made out of turmeric or vermilion paste and offer a prayer to keep both the object and its owner safe and bring them good luck. I think many of you might be familiar with rangolis, patterns that Hindus make on the floor to decorate their houses and their entrances, especially around Diwali and other festivals. Here you can see a swastika in the center of a rangoli pattern. And here you see swastika images daubed on a front gate. Again, all the kinds of places where you would invoke and ask for good luck and auspiciousness. Another very visible symbol of Hinduism is the tilak, or these are the forehead markings that you will often find Hindus wear. And they represent the third eye of spiritual wisdom. It's often one of the first things that you'll see people put on their head as part of a sacred ceremony, or when somebody welcomes you to their house or to a temple. And it can be made of a variety of different, it can come in a variety of shapes, as you're seeing in the pictures here, or materials, ash, kumkum, turmeric, etc. But let's look at the bindi now. This is a little more well-known here in the US. Now, bindi is a specific type of tilak. It's a round dot as opposed to some of the other designs that you saw. And traditionally, bindis were red or maroon in color because they were made out of vermilion paste. However, today bindis come in all shapes, sizes, and colors, and they can even be worn as a fashion statement. You might be wondering, what do Hindus wear? Is there a specific attire? No, there is no mandated daily attire for Hindus, but you would probably find many Hindus, especially those from the Indian subcontinent, tend to wear traditional clothing because a lot of it is not mandated by the spiritual texts, but there may be a lot of family culture, customs, or regional beliefs that guide what they wear at specific festivals or how they dress for certain rituals. Some events or festivals may call for special clothing. So when you go to some very conservative temples in the southern part of the country, they will actually ask you to make sure that you are not wearing stitched clothing. So there are some specific temples which have specific requests, but again, that varies a lot and there is no mandate that applies to all Hindus. So let's move on to what Hinduism has contributed to the world during its long history of 7,000 years. I think the impact of Hinduism is hard to overestimate, but is often getting taken for granted because Hinduism really has shaped art, science, architecture, and so much more. If India has at least 6 schools of classical dance, and each of them is grounded in Hindu philosophy and traditions. Again, being a very experiential, visual, and lived faith, Hinduism is really, the Lord Shiva is actually also known as the Lord of Dance. And one of these I'm sure you all have seen the statue of of Shiva. This is actually Shiva in the pose of Nataraja, the king of dance. And he is shown dancing the cosmic dance of life itself, as the universe goes through a cycle of birth and rebirth. But a lot of Indian classical dances actually evolved as forms of worship in the temple. And so they vividly tell and retell the stories of our favorite and most popular deities. So in some sense, the arts in India and some other parts of the world where Hindus live are really sort of inseparable from Hindu beliefs and Hindu practices. It's also a faith that's very closely intertwined with knowledge seeking. Growing up, I often heard about this dichotomy between science and Hindu and religion from the Western perspective, but it's not something that most Hindus struggle with. Because it's a faith that has inspired the deepest of seekers and thinkers through the ages. And Hinduism is credited with some of the most fundamental structures that we take for granted in the world today, including the concept of zero, which evolved as the concept of shunya or nothingness, a very deep philosophical concept when you think of it that way, which went on obviously to power everything that modern math is all about. And pretty much undergrinds, the way the modern world works. We could have no computers without the zero. Contributions of Hinduism to math are too large to encapsulate here, and I'm not the best person to talk about math anyways. But we talked about Ayurveda, which is a holistic form of living treatment. And, here we see an image of what might be considered the world's first plastic surgeon. This is a sage called Sushrut, and his Sushrut Samhita is considered to be the world's oldest and most respected text in plastic surgery. I like to here just throw in a quote from the one and only Carl Sagan and what he had to say about the Hindu religion, calling it the world's only great faith dedicated to the idea that the cosmos itself undergoes an immense, indeed infinite number of deaths and rebirths. It is the only religion where the timescales that are outlined in our shastras or texts correspond very, very closely to what has been discovered now by modern scientific cosmology, including, where we say a day and a night of Brahma is 8.64 billion years long, very close to what is today considered the age of Earth. So what scriptures do Hindus have? That's a hard one because, when a religion has been around for 7,000 years, people have been prolifically writing and debating and talking about a lot of stuff. But I think it helps to think about Hinduism as having scriptures that fall into two categories. The first is called the Shruti, which quite literally translates into that which is heard. And these are divine revelations that are said to have lasting power no matter what era you live in. Then there is Smriti, that which is remembered, texts that are based on human memory, some kind of a human intervention to get them to us today. And they are therefore considered subject to change and context. One way to think about a Smriti may be that it's a code of conduct for a specific period of time, but it's not the equivalent of like the 10 Commandments or something which is eternal and forever. The Vedas, there are 4 Vedas, and the Vedas are considered among the most revered of Hindu literature. And in fact, sometimes in India, where there is a number of religions that subscribe to dharmic beliefs, a belief in the Vedas is one of the things that distinguishes a Hindu believer from other dharmic faiths like Buddhism or Jainism, etc. The Bhagavad Gita, a very famous seminal Hindu text, is sometimes considered a summary of the Vedas, and we'll come to that more in a minute. So there's a little flow chart here for those of you who like that kind of stuff. And it just kind of shows you the complexity of just some of the texts. And this is not a comprehensive, this is a lot of them, but not comprehensive by any means. But it starts to show you the complexity of the texts and how they sort of start at the core and then they branch out, and then there's a lot of ones they've been built on, debated, and this doesn't include the specialized texts that have come for different disciplines that have spun off from the faith. So I'm going to start with a famous quote from the Bhagavad Gita, and this one sort of encapsulates the essence of what the Gita is all about if you were really trying to distill it down to 2 lines, and even the essence of Hinduism. Where it really says that you as an individual or a Hindu, you need to really focus on your karma. And that should be your guiding factor. You need to do what is your duty, what is your right way. And you do it because it's the right thing to do, not because you hope you'll get the right fruits or the right rewards from it. If you get it, great. If you don't, that's still fine. There's still no reason not to do the right thing. And that cannot be a cause for not doing the right thing. The Bhagavad Gita has attracted many compliments from many world thinkers. I'm not going to go through them. You guys can read this. But we'll take a pause and go through a quick quiz. So which one of the concepts that I listed here does not have Hindu roots? Is it the 0? Is it yoga? Is it Bhagavad Gita? Is it curry? Or is it Ayurveda? The answer, of course, being curry. Curry is actually nothing. It's a made-up word by the British. So everything else is derived from Hinduism. I think no discussion on Hinduism would be complete without a reference, at least, to its festivals. And I think as an experiential faith, the Hindu calendar is dotted with a number of festivals, and their honoring and their celebration is really, really important to the faith. They can vary in importance in how they're celebrated due to, diversity of where you live, your family customs, the season you're in, the deity that or tradition that you come from. But some of the more popular ones, I couldn't even list some, but some of the highest level ones I listed here. I'm sure you've all heard of Diwali, which just concluded, Navratri, which came 20 days before Diwali, Holi, which is coming up, Ganesh Puja, Onam, Pongal, Chhat, Makar Sankranti, Baisakhi, so many more, too many to count. So I think that was just our attempt today to give you a flavoring of what Hinduism is all about. Thank you now, and we'll take questions.